Okay.
Okay, we're back. Part 3. Here we go. So we're on those glutees. Biggest muscle in your body. You gotta love the glutees. So they're gonna be performing hip extension and then hip external rotation. They're starting at the ilium as well as like the iliac crest, and they also originate. Um, the iliac crest kind of goes down posteriorly, and then it starts to that sacrum, that triangle bone. And I wish I had a picture of it, but I mean the gluteus it all attached to it. So and then you got your coccyx tailbone. The gluteus maximus also originates there, and then it's gonna stand out laterally, and then it's gonna go down. We're talking the maximus here, and then it's gonna insert onto your femur, but it's also gonna extend down via that IT band, the iliotibial tract, and it's gonna insert into your knee. So I mean, you get the abductor movement, you get the hip extension movement. So you see this fine lady, she's doing some hip extensions uh, from she's on all fours and then she's extending her leg backwards. And then you're gonna want to stretch those in doing the pigeon stretch as well as the pretzel stretch, which I think you girls are aware of being yoga enthusiasts. Okay, into the hip flexors now. There's many different muscles that aid in the action, the hip flexion action. But the true hip flexor muscles are the psoas and the iliacus. So the psoas, it actually originates on your lumbar spine, just kind of on the side, and it's going to extend down and forward, and it actually goes through this obturator foramen, and then it's going to go through that hole, and it's going to attach to the top of your femur. So and it's going to do the hip flexion action. And then I mentioned the iliacus. It's going to originate all in this ilium, and it's going to run down. It runs parallel with that psoas, and they both go through the foramen, the hole, and they actually combine together to become the iliocyamus. So that's 2 of the 3. The third hip flexor is the tensor fasciae latae. It's a superficial muscle, and it attaches to your iliac crest here, and it extends down. And the belly of the muscle is actually only right here, and then again, it's another muscle that attaches to that IT band, and it runs all the way down your leg. Okay. So most muscles of your thigh are actually going to help with the hip flexion. It's kind of important because those true hip flexors are kind of small. You let your thigh muscles kind of be the main movers. You know, you want the bulk of the force to do that.
Is that kind of like a lot of hockey players get injuries in their hip flexors?
So where hockey players go around, they get sore hip flexors because their quads get tight because they're always bent over, so they just get shortened, right? So that when you extend back, they pull really hard, right? Because they're not stretched properly, and then they pull on the hip flexor muscle as well. So they got tight quads, they're pulling on their hip flexor muscles, and the quads aren't working properly, and the hip flexor muscles are actually under a little more load than they should be.
Oh yeah.
Because your quads they're originating at the pelvis, and then they go down to the knee. So if they're here at the pelvis, they're actually going to bring the femur upwards as well, right? And they're much bigger muscles, so you want them to be doing most of the work. Okay, so your hip flexor muscles, they're going to get targeted on a legs day or when you're running. It's not really good to isolate them. They're more sister muscles to your quads. So when on legs day, when you think you're hitting your quads, you're also hitting your hip flexor muscles. You got to do the hip flexor stretch. That's a good one. We're always sitting down, and these muscles in the front of our body, they're just shortening all day when we're sitting. So it's important that you get a good stretch on those. Okay, so we're take a look at that. We're talking kyphosis and lordosis now. These are kind of some deficiencies of the LPHC. And I was just kind of wondering if you ladies knew what type you might be. I mean, you're both physically fit, but maybe if you're leaning towards one or the other.
Lordosis.
You're lordosis.
I think lordosis.
Yeah, you as well. Okay. So this is still on the pelvic tilting. So with the LPHC, from a lateral view, you can break it down into 4 quadrants. So you're going to have the front lower, front upper, rear lower, rear upper. And as it describes in the pictures, you girls are lordosis, so that means that your pelvis is going to be tilting forward. Okay, so that means your quadriceps are pulling on the front of your hips, and your lower back is pulling up on the back of your hips, causing the tilt forward. So with that in mind, what would you think you'd have to do to kind of tilt your pelvis back?
Stretch your quads.
Stretch your quads, yes.
And your abs.
You're going to want to strengthen your abs.
Strengthen
your lower abs, and then
And
get a
hamstring.
pull up on your, and strengthen your hamstrings. That's correct. Okay. And then the kyphosis is basically the opposite. Okay, so we're going to end on